So we're on day 3 now of the first week of our breathing challenge, and I've sent out one video already, and there was the workshop on the diaphragm at the weekend. They're both still accessible on my YouTube channel. The links have been posted. So you can start this at any time. Today we're going to pick up from the previous session and recap on some of the imagery for the diaphragm, and also just play around with some different breathing exercises. So I've got some new imagery as well for the diaphragm. And the other thing I'd like to sort of mention is obviously the diaphragm actually has 2 roles. So we're sort of working the diaphragm to make it stronger. It's a muscle, and like all the other muscles in our body that need to be maintain their strength and their function, the diaphragm is exactly the same. So when we breathe fully, we're getting a full contraction and stretch of that muscle, the same way that we would like to train any other muscle to make it strong and function well. So the other role that the diaphragm has, which is as I'm speaking, obviously I'm not also able to breathe into my belly very easily, because when I talk, I need more tone in my diaphragm, so it's not movement is reduced. And this is the same when we're looking for stability. So when, say for example, is a rider in a walk, when it's much easier to balance and maintain good alignment and maintain your sense of tension in the shoulders, nice and easy. As soon as we start to need the demand for stability increases, the tone in our diaphragm will automatically increase depending on the demand or what it needs to do to keep us to maintain our position. And that's what we need to kind of encourage, so that let the body do what it does. Okay, so this is where we start looking at what is core, what is the core. And so the diaphragm plays a role in stabilizing as well. And so we need to train it to be stronger, but also to be more efficient in that role when needed. So just thinking about the diaphragm again, recapping on where it is in the body. I had an image in the last video. I'm not going to use that today, but just a reminder that the diaphragm sits inside the chest cavity. This is my sternum here. And if you see this pointy bit at the bottom, the diaphragm inside is about a couple of centimeters just above this sigmoid process. So if I was to place my hands there, I can feel my sigmoid process and come up, and my diaphragm would be this shaped dome inside the chest. We remember when we inhale, the diaphragm goes down, the ribs expand. So you may feel a lifting of your ribs, but the diaphragm is going down. And then when we breathe out, the ribs soften down, the diaphragm pushes up, goes up into the chest. So again, it's that parachute shape or that jellyfish shape, flattening out on the in-breath and lifting on the out-breath. Okay, so there's that. It acts very similar to a bicycle pump. So if this is my diaphragm, so the disc inside there, when I want to pull the air in, this comes down and it vacuums and draws the air in. And then when we want to take the air out, we push, and that pushes the air out. Yeah, so it vacuums, draws the air in, diaphragm lowers, and diaphragm lifts to push the air out. Okay, so there's another image for you there. Pushing out to come up. So when the lungs inflate, just recapping on one. This is my diaphragm, this is my right lung. As it inhales, it opens Yeah, so we get that lovely feeling of our lungs inflating as the diaphragm lowers. So you can think of that whole rib cage expanding as the diaphragm lowers. And the other one that was quite effective is your diaphragm, your heart, yeah, there on the attaches to the diaphragm. So the heart is on like a little elevator. So every time the diaphragm lowers down, the heart goes with it and lifts up with it as well. So we've got a couple of other images here that we can look at when we do our breathing exercise. And again, if there's anything that you find is more effective for you, so you can draw on your own images, what it feels like to you, and what helps you to create a more connection with your diaphragm. Please do share those with me. As I said, this is always helpful for others as well. So the more sort of we can tap into, the more we can imagine, the more we can feel. And you're wondering, you know, why is this so important? Because we need to train these muscles when we're in an environment which is calmer and we're in more control. So that when we really need this, when we're in those scenarios where we might feel anxious, we might feel a little bit nervous, we might feel, yeah, pressure's on, competition, for example, that's when all your training will come into its own, because you'll have control of your breaths and you'll be able to do it in a way that is very effective, but not only affects how you feel, but for my riders, your horses will instantly pick up on that. So as I said, they can feel an insect land on them. They can certainly feel how your breathing rate as well. So this is affecting not just yourself, but your horse. And if you're not a rider, your tension, your stress can sort of affect people around you as well. And you probably notice if someone in the room that you're in is stressed, you can take that in as well. So the more we have the ability to control how we're breathing, the better in those situations where, those unforeseen circumstances at times. So practice is how we get better and more control. So let's first of all start by tapping the left rib. So actually, let's have a moment to just notice your breathing here and now. I want you to be relaxed and find comfortable position in your body. So I'd say good alignment. So we're not sort of sitting back, we're not, rotated. You feel comfortable and supported. Just notice if you're holding any tension in your shoulders. And just notice how you're breathing. So I don't necessarily want you to change anything right now, but just acknowledge, how is the breath coming into your body? Where is your breath going? Do you notice if it's coming deep, or do you notice if it's high? Do you feel there's any limitations, any restrictions? What about your lower back? How does your lower back feel? How do your shoulders feel? What about your neck? Just notice how you feel in your body. What about your ribs? Are your ribs moving at all? So then we're going to take our hands, we're going to start to tap and continue to breathe deeply into the rib cage. Tapping around the back of the ribs. And tap on the sternum so you can imagine where that diaphragm on that left side is attaching to all those lower ribs inside. And then we can just pause. And then again, take a couple of breaths. How does the breathing compare on each side now? So we've upregulated sensory nervous system here. This is our proprioception, communication between the mind and the body. Tapping movement is how we can upregulate that communication or improve that communication between the brain and that area of the body that's being touched and moved. When you're tapping, breathe. Really imagine those ribs moving. It's important that the rib cage is flexible. And then just rest. Notice taking some breaths. Lovely. So when we want to train a muscle, we've got these, like we want to train our global muscles. Now, if a muscle's in a state of tension, this is an ideal scenario when we're looking to improve how we move. So tension is when a muscle is held in a position. That might be held in its lengthened phase, it might be held in its short phase, but it's inhibited. There's tension in the muscle. So before we can effectively train that muscle, what we need to do is try and release that tension. And sometimes that's not as easy as you might think. So you just go, oh, just relax and let go of that tension. And then as soon as we move, that tension might just come back into the body. So what we're gonna do now is just look at a technique in how to release tension in the diaphragm. I'm going to do an example. If I take your arm, any arm, and I just want you to move the arm around. Okay, so nice and soft fingers. You're able to breathe. Notice how that feels. And then I want you to clench your fist, okay, and create tension in the arm. And now move that arm with that tensed fist, tensed arm, and see how that feels. Okay, so for me, that's just not as satisfying, the feeling of the movement with that clenched and tensed arm. So if I want to release this tension in my arm, one of a really effective way to do that is just by shaking. Yeah, and you might even think, you know, sometimes if you've been stood for a long time, it's an intuitive thing to do, is just shake out. And this is a great way to get tension out of the body. So shake out your arm, shake it out, and then just relax and see how that arm feels now it's had a good old shake. And then move the arm again and notice how that feels compared to when we had tension in the arm and our fists was clenched. So that's kind of showing how a way that we can release tension in the body, and that was kind of a setup for you. But we're holding tension in our body sometimes that we don't always notice, we're not always conscious of until we learn how to release, and that's what we're going to do. So shaking the diaphragm. So shaking the diaphragm, you just start by moving your ribs around. So if you can imagine, if you're on a bicycle and you're going down a cobbly street, and then it goes like this. So that's what you can do this standing up, and sometimes just shaking. So on the spot, and just shaking your diaphragm, you can hear how my voice changes. It's my diaphragm shaking. And then you can move your diaphragm, moving side, shaking, and visualize that diaphragm. You might not want to do this in public because they think you're crazy, but it's really effective, and shaking out the diaphragm. And then take a seat. So you've shaken the diaphragm, and now taking a couple of breaths. You might feel the breathing is more available to you, more volume, more movement of the diaphragm. So now let's give it a stretch. Place your hand on your left side of your rib cage. So my right hand is holding where the diaphragm will be attached on the inside. And I'm going to take my right arm up and just side bend. And here I want to imagine my diaphragm stretching inside. And then exhale and come back. So it doesn't matter if you inhale or exhale, you can play around. So let's try a breath out and a breath in. Breathe out, and that diaphragm stretching and in. So the sides of your body, yeah. When we stretch in there, that diaphragm will bend, get a big stretch, and a recoil. And stretch, and a recoil. And then you go over and you're going to hold, and I want you to breathe. Breathe into that area. Can you access more space on that right side? Breath out. Breathe in. Diaphragm lowers, ribs expand. Breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Coming up and sit. See how that makes you feel different on one side to the other? I'm feeling longer here. Let's do the other side. So place your hand on that left side, right arm up, and visualize, imagine that big stretch inside where your diaphragm is. Stretch the diaphragm. And coming up and back. Breathing in. Breathing out. Or the other way, whichever works for you. And back. And again. And back. And we're going to hold it this time. And take 3 deep breaths. You can keep your hand here and almost feel like when you inhale, the ribs expand, the diaphragm's coming down, but you get that lovely kind of opening up, like you've got gills at the side of your body, and they're just opening up. And they close. The gills open and close. And they open and just come back and notice how that feels. Breathe deep breaths in. So now we've done some preparation for the diaphragm. We're going to get a really nice breathing session in. So we've created more connection with the diaphragm. We have shaken the diaphragm, released tension as much as we can, and we've stretched the diaphragm. On Friday, we're going to do some strengthening as well. But now I'd like to lead you through a short, just a 5-minute breathing exercise. And I'd like to remind you I'm going to talk you through, encouraging you to use your imageries and to, just follow my lead. So we're going to start with, you can close your eyes if you're comfortable with that, but I want you to bring your focus inwards. So as if you was in a room in your home and you identify the objects around you, they're 3-dimensional objects, you're imaging those, you can see them, move around them, everything in the room. And I want you to take that same vision of you being more in your body. So let's think about being inside that chest cavity. We know where the diaphragm is, on top of the diaphragm, sits your heart and the two lungs. We're going to look at what's below that next week, but we're talking about the heart sitting on top of the diaphragm and the two lungs either side. So the diaphragm is this dome shape. It's like a jellyfish shape or a parachute. Just sitting in the center, just sitting inside the chest cavity. So I want you to just bring the breath into your body and just see how that diaphragm lowers down. And as it lowers, your ribs need to expand. And then when you breathe out, the dome comes back up again into the chest. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathe in for 4. And hold. Breathe out for 8. And hold. Inhale for 4. Hold. Exhale for 8. Hold. Inhale for 4. Diaphragm nose like a puff. Drawing the air in. Hold. And push the air out. Diaphragm lifting, doming into the chest, pushing the air out. And hold. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. And pause. Inhale for 4. Chest expanding. Hold. Exhale. 8. And hold. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And hold. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And hold. Inhale. holding, and exhale. Hold, and inhale. Hold, and exhale. Hold, and breathe into breath. In, ribs expanding on the in-breath. Ribs softening down on the out-breath. Breathe your natural rhythm now. Notice how much movement you have in your rib cage, making your rib cage more flexible, more adaptable. And when we free up the rib cage, we're going to get a huge amount of movement potential in our middle back, the thoracic spine. This is where all of those ribs attach to at the back of the body. So you can feel those ribs expanding. Just focus on the rib cage movement. Nice. Well done, everybody. Thank you for joining the session today. So I hope that you felt connection with the diaphragm. As I say, it's hard to train a muscle that we can't see or touch. So we really need to use our mind to connect with that area, and understanding its function helps us to move as we're designed. So get breathing rhythm, get the movement correct. Next week, so we've got another diaphragm session on Friday where we're going to look at strengthening the diaphragm and a little bit more about how the ribs move. So they're really nice embodiments. And next week, look at the corset, that transverse abdominis. So enjoy this. I hope you enjoyed the session. Tomorrow, I'd like you to repeat this session. Just doing the stretches and the shaking and the proprioception, and then do a breathing exercise. So yeah, thank you very much for taking part, and I shall look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.